Welcome. We are project 23, 24 and 25. So actually quite three really diverse projects with interesting things to say. So I think we should just get started right away. We've got Julie and Caroline here from North Yorkshire County Council. We've got Esther here from HMP Liverpool, from Novus, HMP Liverpool. And we've got Lindsay and Kieran hiding in the background. There he is, from Newcastle College. So three super diverse settings and really interesting projects. So Julie, let's start with you and Caroline. There you are.
Okay.
By the way, I will butt in if things start running over. So I'll try and give you a 2-minute warning. But so don't be offended, just to make sure everybody gets there. And please do make use of chat to ask questions, and make sure we get those answered for you as things come up. Great, thanks.
Right, afternoon everybody, and welcome to our presentation. Caroline, Bennell and myself are the curriculum managers for English and Maths respectively, and we work for North Yorkshire County Council Adult Learning and Skills Service. We deliver both GCSE and functional skills courses, accredited courses for adult learners, and we have about 400 to 500 learners each year that access that provision. When COVID hit, then obviously, like everybody else, we had to be quite reactive, and most of our community venues became unavailable. So places like libraries, village halls, some of the school settings, and we're forced to move all of our learning online. This meant that there was an immediate barrier for some of our learners in accessing online provision. And this project really aimed to overcome that. So just to give you a bit of context, North Yorkshire County Council, North Yorkshire is a very rural area and quite widespread, with some affluence but also pockets of deprivation. And within those areas, we have learners who definitely do not or cannot access IT for various reasons. So our project really concentrated on how we could reach learners who could no longer access classroom-based delivery and who lacked digital solutions to actually access any of our online classes. Hence the scratching head, because this was a tricky one. We knew that learners who couldn't access provision due to lack of technology, but there were others who also maybe had technology but lacked confidence or the skills to use it. So there was quite a mixed bag of reasons. So we decided that for all of our learners who fell into this category, that we would use some non-digital delivery methods to start that engagement, with an aim that we would try to remove those barriers, improve confidence in the learners, and hopefully move them on to something else. So what did we do? How did we solve this problem?
So basically, because most of the learners, as Julie said, couldn't access our website and they couldn't pop into area offices to ask about courses, the majority of learners that were struggling with digital solutions were ringing the office. Now, this worked really well for us because we'd prepared a flowchart for our business support team so that they could ask relevant questions and signpost learners either to online assessments and digital classes, or if there were any issues, they would then signpost these learners to our learning guidance and support officers. These LGSOs, as we call them, knew all about the project and also had contact details of prior learners who they could then contact to re-engage in learning. So the increased collaboration with them worked really, really well and ensured that learners could have a thorough conversation about what opportunities there were, and also feel valued because people were taking the time to, speak to them and find out what was best for them. So the LGSOs would signpost these particular learners to one of our teachers, Linda, who was specifically chosen because of her good communication skills, her empathy skills, and just to bring learners out into themselves. And this was really important at this very first stage. So Linda would work through the journals that we'd created with the learners, which helped us to gather initial assessment information and also information about which would be the best communication techniques to reach these learners. So our project did trip up slightly in the fact that we lacked kit for all our teachers. So we ended up with one teacher who was a specialist in both English and maths, who would deliver to these learners. And that also worked well because it helped to build confidence, and just all the learners got the same experience basically, and we knew that he was going to be good with that. So the project was based around the idea of a 6-week introduction where there'd be one-to-one support from the teacher who would do this however the journal sort of indicated they would prefer to learn. So either by phone, by WhatsApp, or via computer. A lot of the people who had originally said they just did not want digital courses at all did benefit from this, because the one-to-one encouragement would often help them to get online onto the normal classes. In other situations where they just didn't have the appropriate kit to do this, they continued with paper-based resources and phone calls and WhatsApp. So the idea was to follow this 6-week introduction with progression to accredited learning.
Okay, so as you can imagine, it wasn't all plain sailing, and the reflective journals that were completed in that sort of initial conversations with learners really helped us to understand what barriers there might be to learning. So one of the things, as you can see in the pie chart, was access to IT. So the majority of learners didn't have access to IT, but actually when you drill down into the numbers, what was really quite surprising was that 83% of the maths learners did have some access to IT, but for learners who'd expressed interest in English, it was very low. Only about 8% had described having any access to IT. We also looked at the ways that learners had expressed that they like to learn. And again, you can see there that 38% of these learners had chosen one-to-one as their preferred learning method. So again, through this project, we're able to cater very well to that expression of need. And then other barriers to learning in the graph at the bottom, well, again, 38% of our learners describe themselves as dyslexic, they have dyslexia, and another 31%, a massive amount, we felt, also expressed other health issues that would impact on their learning. And that, when we drilled into that more closely, a lot of that was around mental health issues, depression and anxiety. So we're very mindful of these issues, and obviously that information was shared with teachers as we took the project forward. So what sorts of outcomes did we have for our learners? Well, we were really pleased with the outcomes that we had. Of the learners that took part in the project, we had initially identified 26 learners. So that was a mixture of maths and English learners. But there were actually, in the end, 12 maths learners that completed the project. And again, the reason that not all learners went forward is, as Caroline described earlier, we had a lack of kits available to our teachers, which meant that we had to sort of narrow our project, which was a disappointment at the time, I have to admit. But all of the learners who took part in the 6-week non-accredited programme with those teacher interventions all completed that programme. So we had 100% of them do that, which was great. And from those, they all then progressed onto some kind of accredited provision. So as you'll see in the graph at the bottom, and you know, it was fairly well split. So entry 3 and level 1, made up the majority of the learners, what they went on to next. But there were some learners who did level 2 and actually one who was interested in an apprenticeship. Other study ideas that learners express, and this was great because they'd already done some maths, was that 43% of them wanted to do more maths, and again a fairly even split between those who'd identified that they'd like to do more English and IT. So those were the outcomes around our traditional idea of what maybe core subjects learners would want to do in accreditation. But there are a lot of other achievements that learners made, a lot of things that they recognised for themselves that they'd accomplished during the course of this 6-week non-accredited programme. And I think we would like and hope that this can now be shared with you through the learner voice. Now, can I just stop there because I don't think I've shared the sound, so I'm going to have to stop and reshare this to make sure we have the sound. Sorry about that. Just do that again.
I believe it's better. I've got 2 minutes left.
Okay. Okay, here we go. So I'll just run the first sound clip for you, and this is feedback directly from one of the learners involved in the project. Oh, it's not worked. Go back, try again.
Yeah, absolutely perfect. I mean, the training that I've been given from yourself and learning from yourself, you've helped me myself tremendously. And I've learned a lot, and I've gone away with a newfound confidence within myself that I didn't know. And I've learned a lot about what I can do and my capabilities. But not only that, it's helped within my work as I deal with facts and figures and lots of other things along the way, and processing numbers constantly. So it's helped a lot, and also helped with my children as well, teaching them as well. Things that I didn't know, I've actually then passed on to them because I've learned from yourself. So yes, it's been great.
Okay.
I don't know if we'll have time to do them all, Julie.
No, I think the help that you give and the understanding of everything that you do is exceptional, because you lay things out in a way that's right for adults, right for the way the programme is done. Everything is well organised and presented well, and the papers are easy to go by, and you're always at hand to speak to. So I wouldn't change anything. The way it's laid out and the way it's done is absolutely top notch, so to speak. It's very well laid out programme.
Okay, and just quickly this last one, because it talks about further ideas for study.
I applied to the Open University, and I've got in, and I'm going to be doing business studies and management and a diploma. And I'm also doing equine psychology as well, which is a personal thing to myself. But the business one is to set my own business up again, which I am doing. And that's all thanks to the further learning. You've given me that confidence to think, right, I can study. And it's helped tremendously. So,
and we are going to the next level in maths, aren't we? You know, we've got to try and go all the way. Okay.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Okay.
I'm so excited.
Well, that's fantastic. Thanks for that, Im.
Okay, so there's a little bit of further feedback. I was going to sort of read that out because it's quite small, but as we're battling for time, I think it might be better just to move on to the last slide. But all that will be in the appendices in the main report anyway.
Okay, so overall outcomes from the project. So as highlighted before, when we looked at the graphs, we had all learners complete that 6-week programme, and from that, all of them went on to progress onto accredited provision at the appropriate level for them. And as the clips you've just heard and the feedback comments that were just shown, there were other things that sort of spiraled off from that and really that was generated from the learners' increased confidence and the fact that they've been able to move on to some accreditation at the end of that intro programme.
Okay, so the collaborative work with the LGSOs will continue, as it was a really positive step and it supported our most vulnerable learners. We're also working more closely with development officers because it's a better offer. It's, you know, it's a more varied offer that we've now got.
And as this project was so successful for our disadvantaged learners, then we are going to continue to offer something similar in this next academic year. And I'm sure that will attract quite a large number of learners who, for whatever reason, that 6-week non-accredited programme with the one-to-one support is something that they would prefer to access rather than going straight into an online class or back into a classroom setting.
Yeah, and on a very positive note, on a last note, our senior management team have now recognised the need for kit for teachers and loan equipment for learners. So this means the project can continue and it'll sit alongside our classroom and online offer.
That's really good news, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Finally.
Finally.
Thank you, everyone.
We look forward to hearing how that goes. We're going to take questions at the end, just so we make sure we keep enough time for everybody. So Esther, you're up next. Esther is from HMP.
Okay. Let's see if I can share this. Is that working? That's the beginning.
Am I muting? Do you want to make it a little bit bigger? Can everybody see that all right? Okay.
There we go. Okay, so this is Project 24. So it's based at HMP Liverpool, which in the Functional Skills Department. So we teach English and Maths from Entry 1 to Level 2. And before I talk about what we learnt, I want to talk about what we wanted to find out originally. So the original aim of the project came from an Ofsted inspection that we had in September 2019, which told us that target setting was weak in most lessons. So basically our targets weren't challenging or inspiring enough. So we wanted to work to see if there's any ways that we could look to improve that. So the original idea was that we would get learners to reflect more, because we also noticed that was an area that we noticed learners weren't really reflecting on their learning as much as they could do. So the original intention was for learners to take part in lots of reflective activities, so things like brain dumps, post-it notes at the end of the lessons, exit slips, get lots of information from that, and then hope that learners would get more involved and then be able to set their own targets. Unfortunately, COVID happened, so we weren't able to go into the classroom. So the exit slips that we wanted to do had to be posted through locked doors with the workbooks that we were posting underneath, through conversations that we were having through small windows in the doors of the cells. We were getting some exit slips back, but it was a slow process. And while we were getting some information, it wasn't really enough to get a lot of data from and difficult to analyse. So we came up with another idea, which was to use the in-cell telephones, where we could have interviews with the learners about what they'd learned, what they could remember about what they'd learned, and what they wanted to work on next. So kind of what we wanted to do in the classroom, but replicate it just on a one-to-one basis. What we found from that was that learners found it quite difficult to remember what they'd learned. Sometimes it could have been a couple of weeks ago. Sometimes they just didn't know, they had to look back in their book to check. And then when we asked them about what they wanted to learn next, they found it very difficult to identify. So they'd say things like, I don't know, ask my tutor, or if they're on an English course, to go, or I want to do plastering. It wasn't fitted into targets that they would work on for their course they were on at the moment. So that started to think, well, we've got a bit of a problem there. What can we do about making it better? So we sent out another survey on the prison communication system across a more broader section of of learners. And we thought we'd have sort of similar responses to what motivates you, or how can we get you interested. We thought it would be sort of similar, sort of apathetic kind of attitude towards the learning. What we found was the opposite. So you can see here on the bottom right is some of the responses from the telephone interviews. On the top left, we can see that a lot of learners were really involved in wanting to better themselves. They just wanted to improve. They were motivated. So it showed that our cohort did want to learn, but not necessarily what we were teaching at the moment. So that's where the title of the project has come from. So do they want to learn what we're teaching them? Because they obviously want to learn something, but not what we're doing at the moment. So that led us to think about what we could do to get them, or how we can meet their needs a bit better. Let's see if I can go back to where I was. So I've been very ambitious doing a Prezi, and I'm not that used to them, so I need to go back to 2. So preparations have started for a return to the classroom. Hopefully that's fairly imminent. And as teachers, we've all been looking forward to getting back to face-to-face delivery. We assumed that our learners would be too. Looking at the survey, we found that the results from that challenged that as well. Most of our learners want to either carry on with in-cell learning or do a combination of both. So do a bit of classroom and a bit of in-cell. So we always thought that learning behind the door would be a bit of a stopgap. Second best. We've actually found that a lot of learners have found it a safer place to learn. So while they find it very difficult to admit to mistakes in classrooms where they've got their peers around them, they would copy things, they wouldn't really want to say, no, actually, I don't understand that. On their own in the cell, and just they knew it was just their tutor looking at their books, they felt quite safe to make a mistake or say, can you explain that again? So that's something we will again wanted to take forward. So we know that the learners at HMP Liverpool do want to learn. We just need to make sure that the way we're teaching is the most helpful to them. Yeah. Okay, so reflecting on the project and thinking about what we might do differently next time. One key point I thought about was we needed to be a little bit quicker in doing things differently. So it was completely within our power to change what we were doing, whether we were going to do exit slips or interviews. I think if we'd started with the interviews a bit quicker, we'd have got some more information from that and maybe be able to deal with it a bit quicker. It also would have been interesting to see if this situation was replicated across other prisons in Liverpool, or not in Liverpool, across the country. Novus teach definitely loads in the northwest and throughout the country, so it would have been good to see if what was happening here was happening in other prisons. So a collaborative approach across a network of prisons would be something relatively easy to do. So what's next for us? So the findings of the project have given us a really good opportunity to design a new blended learning model in preparation for our imminent return to the classroom. We've been working closely with the prison to develop a new timetable. So we'll attend classes in small groups. So bear with me, I'm just trying to get to that slide. I've got people. So we're going to have protected time in the classroom for very small groups, combined with in-cell learning. Previously, we've had to fit quite closely with the prison regime, so lessons would often be interrupted by things like visits or medical appointments, things like that. Now we know that when we're in the classroom, we're going to have our learners, they're not going to be taken off, so it's going to be much easier to plan, and the continuity for the learners will be much better. And it's also prompted us carefully to think about motivation for our learners and how to make English and maths relevant for the men at HMP Liverpool. So before, learners were obliged to reach a certain level of English and maths before they could go on to vocational courses. So it's this thing that they had to get out of the way before they could do the thing they really wanted to do. So now we're going to start thinking about the option of doing non-accredited English maths courses alongside accredited ones. So this will accommodate learners who want to brush up on skills for their own self-improvement, along with those who want to study for an exam. And real consideration is now being made to combine learners' true interests along with English and maths by adapting resources used in lessons. We're also looking for a further connection between our departments and the vocational training areas. That's also being explored and may well be an interesting topic for further research and something I might be considering for OTLA. And I'm also in talks already with some people from other prisons across Novus for our future project as well. So that collaboration is definitely going to happen. That's it. If there's any other questions or anything else.
Yeah. Esther, you speak so calmly and quietly, but actually some of those things you said are quite revolutionary. they're actually really, really big things for anyone who's worked in prison education. Just to be able to change, get a prison to think about changing how things are delivered.
It's always the thing that, wouldn't it be good if we did this? And it was always like, well, no, we can't do that.
Yeah.
But because we've had to, we can, which is great.
Yeah. So would you actually say in the end that was sort of the upside of COVID running wild through prisons?
Yeah.
There's something positive out of it.
Definitely show that we can work a different way and we can be a bit more flexible and imaginative. And it's definitely with collaboration from the prison. I think if we were in a different prison, they might not have been so open to doing something a bit different. I think we are quite privileged at HMP Liverpool that we've got a prison who's open to new ways of looking at things.
Andy.
Sorry, I feel a bit of a heretic saying this, but I'm almost wondering whether, if Liverpool's a really good prison, it would only be problematic if you tried to extend it and work with more prisons, because won't they close down and say, oh no, that's no good, it won't work here? It's
possibly, but because everyone's had to change what they're doing, everyone's been challenged to work a different way, they might also have seen that they could do things differently.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great idea, but please don't let any negativity when you try to do it. Don't let that kill that wonderful flower you're growing. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
That's really good, and hopefully we'll have time for more questions. Or any put questions into chat, and we can deal with them at the end. Now we have. Thank you so much, Esther. I've learned so much about action research under the most difficult circumstances from Esther this year, of sort of the grit and determination required to get that done. I appreciate that. Now we look to Newcastle. Lindsay and Kieran.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Oh, this one, isn't it?
Got click share.
Thanks. It was right. Like that.
We'll just stop.
Cool. Hi everyone. So our project was called Finally Closing the Loop, where we looked at using gamified principles to develop effective feedback in the classroom.
Thank you.
So we hoped to study and develop rich feedback within the classroom using the tool of gamification. And we thought about how gamification could develop teachers' activity toolkits and create fulfilling, deep and rich feedback which empowers the students. Our project was originally 2 separate projects, so it was an amalgamation of 2 that came together. Kieran's, which was looking mainly at gamification, and my idea, which was to look mainly at feedback and how different types of feedback could give different responses from learners for them to take charge of their own learning.
No, I think that's perfect.
Okay. Teamwork. So when we were thinking about our personal considerations for this project, Kieran, I will hand over to you.
So one of the big premises I really wanted to focus on was trying to make our classrooms more emancipatory, making sure that, especially us in an FE provider, and delivering predominantly English and maths in our area, we do tend to have students that feel like they've been victimized by the system, or feel like obviously engaging with a program that they don't really want to study in. So our big push was really trying to empower them and trying to get them to feel like what we're doing is there to inspire them and make them a better student. And also my premise was really focusing about trying to embed some innovation and fun back into classrooms. I think especially in our circumstances as a college provider, we have a lot of people come for their health course or their science course, and then they have to obviously then, you've got to do English and maths as well. So actually trying to get some of that fun, trying to see some of that relevance back into English and maths was really one of my key focuses for looking at this.
One of my key focuses was to encourage students to have more engagement with their feedback, and for them to see English and maths not as something that was being done to them. So we looked at student autonomy and student engagement. So we had to consider 2 different things when we started the project, which was the needs of staff, so us, and the needs of the student. So in terms of staff needs, we thought about CPD, development, motivational and innovative, reactive to hybrid models. We thought about new approaches for students, about the engagement, and how we could move away from a school model to trying something new. Obviously, our lovely friend COVID had different ideas, so we had to move quite quickly between face-to-face learning and hybrid learning and online learning as well.
So looking at the project design itself, we went for a kind of experiential learning approach. So what the kind of 4 steps of that was that we wanted to conceptualize a lot of concepts. So originally the idea of this wasn't to kind of give teachers a new fad, it was to really adapt toolkits and already existing ideas that we'll have in the profession and kind of inspire people to use them more in a gamified manner. So we had at the beginning quite a lot of approaches. So that was our conceptualized part. We obviously then reviewed and finalized them, which we'll look at in a minute, and then implemented them in the classrooms. Because of COVID, obviously we had to change that, but thankfully the idea of gamified feedback actually really was inherently quite good with a hybrid model, and it allowed us to test things in a sense of, right, this is a really good concept online, does this actually work in the classroom, and vice versa. And then onto that point we led to our reflection and retry. So in real short, the kind of our project itself, we knew at the beginning was quite a big uptake in, that we didn't particularly narrow it down, but we wanted to do that so that our students themselves could be the ones that guided the project. And we used that by some examples of the project autonomy. So we did a learner voice tally. What we did was we kept introducing new activities to the students, and we just got them to say, do you like these ones? Which ones really resonate with you? So we wanted to, instead of us as professionals going, right, we think this works, off you go, we wanted to give the students a bit more voice. So as you can see on the screen, we've got a bit of a, got a pie chart where we've asked people, we've got our learner tally, we use something called Nearpod quite a lot, which was really handy in our hybrid. And that allowed students to just post live and professionals to post live. Also on the right, we've got a like it scale. So what we did in our classes that we tested on, we got them to look and answer how they felt about the activities they were taking part. And we kind of split them into, on our side, into kind of 3 kind of strands: the perception of the activity itself, the immediacy of the feedback, and how, whether it like improved engagement itself. Moving on, so there was some concerns with our project, as we've already said, and the issue with shaping the project to empower the student and not imposing sanctions meant we were kind of at the power and the mercy of the students and the staff themselves. As we've already mentioned, we had to redesign a lot of the approaches that we took due to the hybrid class model issue, which I think everyone in this conference has had very similar situations with. And trying to move kind of our ideologies as a college, we're trying to move our practice away from here's everything you don't know for your grade, and try to change them to like a journey-based approach. And that kind of change of methodology, especially on a subject which a lot of students have got negative connotations with, it's quite an uphill battle to get them going from I'm a failure to right, look at the progress you made. So that was some of the issues we had. Also just with staff as well, and ourselves included, rapidly moving to teams, rapidly moving to technology. And I think sometimes in education, there is a fear that it's the fad of the week, or this is the new shiny thing of the month. And we didn't want to push it as that. We wanted to see it as like developing our already existing toolkit using gamified principles to like develop it further. So in terms of our findings, when we looked at our staff that we partook in this, the behaviour and the openness to technology really led to the staff buy-in. It started an adjustment of power dynamics. For example, in my classrooms, a lot of the kids were telling me, or a lot of the adults that I was teaching were going, I actually want to do this next week. I think because this is where I'm up to. These are the things I'm struggling on. Can we do this next week? And they were gaining some of that autonomy via the feedback that we were finding. Our staff as well were really excited and open to new concepts, especially techniques that are going to tackle that student-teacher divide on digital platforms. I think all of us back in March had that fear when we first turned the camera on in Microsoft Teams. It was 2 hours, or of you just smiling at a blank screen while everyone just typed yes every 5 or 10 minutes just to humour you. But our staff and our students were really excited by that, and like the CPD and like actively experiment in the classrooms. We managed to do with this as well a lot of CPD for the college. We had quite a lot of cross-college buy-in. So on the screen, you can see some of the comments that we had from there about how it could be applied to different vocational classes. A lot of the vocational areas were really interested about how could we map this approach of gamified feedback into their vocational areas to make a consistent approach, which again is changing the culture of the college. We also had a lot of people saying it would work really well with students with LD needs, and how they can adapt the toolkit that we presented to people in a way that might be able to hit a lot of different needs in an educational sense. Mine as well. Okay. I think one of the most powerful things when we interviewing the students is the quote right at the top there. I finally know what I'm at. I'm not a failure. I've got this. And it was showing that the students were really buying into this. We've obviously got some examples of gamified in a minute that we'll talk about, but on a quantitative sense, when we looked at the classes as a success measure, like for KPIs, an adult learner level 2 class was 20% improved attendance in comparative to the classes that gamified feedback wasn't tested on. They were higher on their, generally quite higher on percentages of pass rates at that point. And the classes are showing proactivity in their own learning. So obviously I mentioned the Likert scale before, and obviously you don't have the questions on screen, but I just wanted to bring attention to 4, 10 and 13. The strongly agree questions. If we flick back really quickly, should have put that on the side, that would be more sensible. Number 4, you feel in control of your learning. Number 10, I help shape what learning I need to do in my class. And number 13, I can see what we've done and how it's clear in every class. I think if nothing else from this project, it's really motivational to myself and Lindsay and our staff that the students are using this. They're feeling it like it has some viability, and they're like buying into it.
So when we thought about if we could continue this into the next academic year, we were thinking about what we could do differently, and what we can take forward. So we could have, and I'm sure Andy will agree with this, that we could have considered how to make our project smaller right from the very, very start, rather than trying to make it something bigger. In reflection, we did design our first part to be a filtering process to focus our research, but I think maybe that should have been done right at the start, and I'm sure Tricia agrees as well. With retrospective consideration of COVID-19, the wealth of knowledge and skills that were developed within our project are just the beginning. So it's just the start of something. The knowledge that we'll take forward is the features and actually the gains of immediate feedback and how the students react to it. The strength of gamification in English and maths, the skill set's been applied to a training procedure, which I'm sure Kieran will be able to explain a little bit more about. And if this is something that we can create and design as a full toolkit that we can share again with the wider college.
Yeah, so linking on to Lindsay's part, obviously, we haven't really given a lot of examples of the gamified approaches just because hopefully you've seen it in our previous one, but also we just wanted to really focus on our findings. But just to kind of give everyone a backlog if you're not aware, so gamified feedback is using mechanics of games in the feedback process to engage and improve. So for example, really short, easy ideas like adding a timer, adding a score. Some of the ones that we said as well, like using experiential. So students don't start at 100 and go backwards. They start at 0 and they make a progress and a journey as we go on. In terms of the training procedure, what's happening because of obviously their study at the moment, I work really closely with the apprentices and we're kind of building a gamified program into the apprenticeship that goes through their vocational program as well. So when they're enrolled, that everything's mapped on the same system, everything gains them experience, and that the student is more aware and more autonomous in their journey. And I think that's really exciting that the apprentices are brought into that. But I know, Lindsay, you spoke to a couple of areas that are really interested about trying to map this English and maths approach of getting the students engaged with their own feedback in a more fun, gamified manner to like really bring it forward.
Yeah, so I'm luckily this year going to be working with business and digital technology, so which will both really easily lend themselves to it. And that, I think, is the end with 2.5 minutes to spare. Has anyone got any questions?
I have a half-formed question.
Okay.
I really do grasp the idea of immediate feedback. And how that works, and people, then a learner perceives where they are. I understand that, and I think that's great. How does it then fit with marking and that kind of like deep feedback? It doesn't replace it. Does it replace it?
I think that's kind of one of the problems that we've got, like, in thinking about how we could maybe keep moving forward with it, is how to make that transition from like the rich deep feedback into something that we could make gamified.
I think there is a lot of premise there though. I think it's not getting rid of the rich feedback, because actually the content of the feedback of here's the areas you're really good at, or a student designing their own targets and their own lessons actually is rich feedback. It's just packaged in a different manner. And I think with the ideas, so some activities we've done is timed activities, and then obviously the teacher approach of repeating them 2-3 weeks down the line and so on and so forth. Having that consistency actually and being able to track in a data manner is kind of part of the rich feedback. If they're repeating the activity and they go, oh, do you know what, I've done this time, excellent, or I know I'm really bad at this and I can tell you I'm bad at this, that is the rich feedback. It might not be in the formalized manner that we might be using, but I think, as we've said a couple of times, we're not looking at replacing things, we're adapting a toolkit. So I think it's more of a rich feedback is still here, but how we present it might be in ways that are more student friendly and student focused, rather than for us or Ofsted to tick a box.
Okay, yep, thank you. Thank you. Actually, do you want to stop sharing? I also have everybody up on the screen now. Thank you very much. Thank you to all of you.